Hey everybody, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to Cinefessions, where we talk all things media. So last week I talked about one of the September releases from Visual Vengeance. That was Spy Number 9, Replicator. Now this was a Brett McCormick film, but also in September they released another Brett McCormick film, Spy Number 10, The Abomination. And this one actually came out years before Replicator did. This is from 1986, and oh boy, this was an interesting one. So let's talk about this release today. Before we get into all that though, if you have a quick second, go ahead and hit that like button down below. That engagement really does help me out. But with that said, let's not waste any more time at all. Let's dive right into my Blu-ray review for The Abomination. So let's start off with the presentation itself, the actual packaging. First off, beautiful cover art depicting the actual Abomination there. And there is the back of that slip cover. We'll take the slip off and we have some new art there as well, which looks awesome. Again, I'll just show you the back, even though the back is pretty much the same on all of these. And then my favorite, I talk about it every time, we have the original VHS cover art as reversible. So let me flip this over because this is how mine will live. Right there. That is so utterly ridiculous, but I love it. So yeah, that's the one that mine will be rocking from here on out. But anyway, on the inside, if you open it up, we have the stickers that you always get from Visual Vengeance. You have the disc itself, and then of course, the poster. Behind the poster, we have a booklet. This one actually has an essay in it, and you can see there, a pretty long one, so that's pretty cool to see. There's actually an essay within the disc itself too, which is so different and unique, but I thought that was kind of interesting. And then the best part of this entire presentation is this guy right here. This is actually the comic book adaptation of The Abomination. It's pretty short. It's all done in black and white, as you can see there. But yeah, I love that they have this in there. Like, that's such a unique idea, and so it's really cool to have that as part of the packaging. So I think Visual Vengeance, as always, has just done a bang-up job on the presentation of this release. Okay, so let's talk about the movie itself. And this was such a weird film. So this one is a shot on video, super low budget film from the 80s. So you have to be a fan of that if you're going to spend any time with this movie at all, first off. But basically with The Abomination, we're following this guy named Cody. He lives with his mom, and his mom has this tumor inside of her. Well, she's obsessed with this TV evangelist. And he says, you know, one night, come to the TV if you have cancer and blah, blah, blah. Put your hand on the TV and I will heal you. And so she does this while her son's out for the evening, and she ends up coughing up her tumor. That tumor turns into the titular Abomination. It is so ridiculous. Cody comes home that night. The tumor ends up crawling into his mouth while he sleeps. He chokes it up the next morning and then sticks it under his bed. And then from there, he realizes that he doesn't really have full control of his faculties anymore. And he is basically possessed by the Abomination. He is going to do the heavy lifting for the Abomination, which means he's going to go out and become a serial killer and bring back the bodies and feed the Abomination these bodies. And that's pretty much the story. There's not much more to it than that. So that's what you're getting with the Abomination. This one for me, right from the get-go, I'll mention, this was probably my least favorite release by Visual Vengeance in terms of the actual movie itself. This movie was so slowly paced. Right from the beginning, it feels like, yep, they're going to do a lot of padding, which frankly, they did a lot of padding with Replicator as well, because they were trying to make it a certain length, which is what I'm sure we're doing with Abomination too. Because of that, the opening sequence is like 5 minutes of this guy waking up in bed over and over again. And they're showing basically all of the like gory bits from the film, all the murders that are about to happen. They show off in the first 5 minutes. And then it jumps into to the next scene, or maybe it's 2 scenes there, whatever. It's early on in the film where there's this voiceover going on, which there's a lot of voiceover in this movie. It's very strange. Cody's talking with his doctor. At least that's how it's presented. He's talking to this doctor who says that he is being accused of all these different murders. You have this voiceover. He ends up murdering someone. He kind of talks through that. He puts them in the back of their truck and goes to washes his truck. You have this whole scene. It's decent length. And then that scene actually repeats itself in full without the narration about halfway through the film. So it's like, why did we show that scene twice? The answer is probably to pad the runtime because you're trying to make it that feature length at 90 minutes. So that was one of the reasons it was very slowly paced. The other reason is because throughout this movie, there are so many like driving sequences. It is crazy how much we watch people drive from point A to point B. So if you were to strip out all of those moments where it's like lingering on a character for an extended period of time where nothing is happening, if you were to take those moments out in the repeated scene, you would really have about maybe 45 minutes worth of a movie here that actually drives a plot forward. And the other half of the movie, it doesn't really move things forward. And that's why I call this one just extremely slowly paced. And frankly, that's one of the main reasons I just didn't enjoy myself as much with this one as I have with some of the other Visual Vengeance releases. Another aspect I have to talk about on this is the acting. Now, the acting on these movies are never great. I have very low expectations in terms of the acting on these films. But this one, it was probably one of the worst I've seen, again, from these Visual Vengeance shot on video releases.
Hi, I'm Brother Paul.
These people are not actors for the most part. A lot of them are just Brett McCormick's family and friends. His girlfriend plays one of the main female roles in this. So this is not what they're doing for their careers. They're just having some fun. So power to them. They did the best that they could. But because of that, the acting does suffer quite a bit. Also, the audio on this, I believe it was all done as like ADR work, which just means that they recorded the voiceovers after the fact. So all the dialogue, I believe, was recorded after the movie was already done filming. So none of it is like on location at all. And it just sounds odd as you're watching through that. But put all of that aside and forget about it, because the thing that killed me the most, the thing that I laughed about so hard throughout this movie was the Foley work. It was hysterical. So this is like basically the special effects, sound effects that come in, kind of the natural effects, like walking through the grass field or whatever. And it was absolutely hilarious. It was so over the top. The mix on it was ridiculous. It's so loud compared to it's like the same volume level as the dialogue, which is just silly. So that was so funny. Like, I thought that was hilarious, an hilarious aspect of this film. But, outside of that, if we go over to what you can appreciate about the Abomination, the gore effects on this thing are incredibly well done. All practical effects, of course, given when this was released. And man, they do such a great job with the Abomination. It is genuinely creepy. And I think that's a huge feather in the cap for this movie, because you don't expect that, I guess, in films of this budget, but they did such a great job with what they had. And there are buckets and buckets and gallons of blood in this film, which is exactly what they were trying to do. So I think they achieved that aspect for sure. So if you're someone who really likes watching low budget shot on video horror films, you might get a kick out of this. If you look at the Letterboxd reviews, they're all pretty high on the Abomination. And I think a lot of that just comes into the fact that you couldn't find this very easily prior to this release. And so when you are working really hard to find something and you've heard about it, over the years, after all this time, and you finally see it, you're just going to have a bigger appreciation for it. And the other thing to consider is, sometimes you're just not in the right mood for something like this. Maybe you're in the mood for, a bigger budget. You're in the mood for something different. And so you have to be in the right headspace for a movie like this to really enjoy it. If you're with friends, you're going to enjoy it more. My wife watched this with me for a few minutes and she was just so taken aback by what the heck was going on screen. It was hilarious. But yeah, so for me, this was the most bored I was while watching one of these releases. Yes, the special effects are super impressive, so kudos to Brett McCormick and company there. I think they did a wonderful job with that. But there's just not much in terms of the plot here. And frankly, the ending of the film, which of course I'm not going to spoil, but it renders the whole voiceover thing that happens earlier just completely nonsensical. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know what they were going for in terms of a plot. That's not really what the focus was, though. It was trying to get as much blood and gore and special effects into the film as they could. And with that, they succeeded. So I will give The Abomination from 1986 1.5 out of 5 stars. So let's talk a little bit about the AV side of this disc. So on the audio side, even though I did complain about the Foley work and the ADR work earlier, that's not anything that Visual Vengeance has any control over. That's just how the movie was done originally. And so because of that, I think they did a really good job with it. I've never lost any of the dialogue at all, which was some of my complaints on some other Visual Vengeance releases. But this one, everything is right front and center. No issues there. Not a ton of special effects really in terms of like sound effects outside of that Foley work. So no real complaints there. Nothing to really test the sound system at all. So I think on the audio side, it is completely sufficient. On the video side, it is very clearly a shot-on-video movie. Now, that said, it looks as good as you're probably ever going to see it. I didn't lose anything in this one. Again, some former complaints on other releases where that maybe things were just a little bit too dark, maybe cranking up that brightness a little bit, but I didn't have that problem with this release at all. I think everything looked as good as it possibly could. Again, you're getting masters from the original tapes. So those are SD tapes that they are mastering to a 1080p picture. So keep that in mind going into this. Like, and frankly, if you're watching this far into the review, you probably already understand that and are fine with that. But just keep that in mind if you're someone who hasn't watched one of these before. Frankly, I wouldn't start with The Abomination anyway, but just as a reference point, it doesn't look good, but it's looking as good as it's ever going to. Now let's talk about the special features on this, because this is really where Visual Vengeance shines and why I love this company so much. So The Abomination was a movie that, from some of the accounts in the special features, the VHS tape was going for like 1,000+ recently on eBay. That's insane. No one, like none of us are really going to be able to spend the money on that to see something like this. And so the fact that Visual Vengeance now provides this on Blu-ray where it's accessible to anyone who wants to pick it up. On top of that, they also add in a ton of special features to just show it the love that it deserves. And that is why I love Visual Vengeance. But that said, there are a couple commentary tracks on this one. We have a commentary with Tony Strauss of Wang's Chop magazine. I believe I've talked about him in the past. And then we have a commentary with the director and then a couple people from Visual Vengeance. Now, this time around, I didn't even sample these, frankly. I just ran out of time, so I didn't get a chance to look at the commentary tracks on here. I'm not a commentary track guy anyway, as you guys know if you watch these reviews, so they're there. If you love them, check them out. On top of that, there is a feature-length documentary that is an interview with Brett McCormick. Like, that's phenomenal that they've gone the extra mile. Not 20 minutes like it was in Replicator, which is still impressive and good. This is an hour and 15-minute documentary with Brett McCormick on his background and the film. Like, phenomenal stuff by Visual Vengeance. In addition to that, there are some interviews. You get Blue Thompson, who is one of our main female characters. Turns out she was dating Brett McCormick at the time, which is why she ended up in the film. And then we have one with, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's Brett McCormick's mother. They have a different last name, but I believe it's his mom, the way she was talking in there. And that was just absolutely adorable. She is so very clearly a big fan of her son's work, even though she doesn't, love that type of movie necessarily. She's just a fan of his work. And so the love coming through there was awesome. I thought it was so cute that they were able to get his mother to do an interview on there. I loved that. It was pretty short, only about 5-6 minutes, but I thought that was pretty cool to be included there. The other really cool interview on this is with the original VHS distributor. His name is Michael Jack Scholl, and he talks about how this was really kind of the start of his career in film, but how he's continued on that career ever since. He now releases releases, it works in like the gay film industry and does a lot of films that are catered to that market. Not adult films. They are, you know, traditional films, but that's the themes of those films. And so it was really interesting to hear his take on it all the way back when they were doing like telemarketing, trying to sell these videos, all the way up now through his current career. So I thought that was just a really cool interview. What an interesting idea to get the original VHS distributor on to have a conversation with. I thought that was an awesome interview. You also get a lot of smaller special features on this release as well. There are some behind the scenes things, like some outtakes, which are about a minute long each. There are some home videos that were done on Super 8, which actually the first half is home videos, but the second half is this like stop motion animation thing that McCormick did, which was kind of interesting. Blood in there as well. So that was cool. But you also get a location tour with McCormick. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Just going back to where this was filmed. It was actually filmed right back to back with another film that he did. And so kind of talking about the location on both of those, which was interesting. And then you also get like 45 minutes, I believe it is, of like outtakes and reel footage. And so that was kind of strange. Honestly, I kind of fast forwarded through that just because there wasn't a whole lot going on and you can't hear it all that well. But it's there if you're super interested in checking it out. So not maybe the most valuable special feature, but hey, it's cool that they tossed it on the disc anyway, since they had access to it. So the special features on this are just excellent. I think Visual Vengeance always knocks it out of the park, but sometimes they do it better than others. I think this is one of those that is one of their top tiers in terms of the special features that they produced for this release. So the Abomination is a weird one because while I think the special features are some of the best you can get from Visual Vengeance, and if you're a Brett McCormick fan, you absolutely want this release to figure out more about his backstory. But the film itself, probably my least favorite that Visual Vengeance has put out. I don't think I've been as bored with a film as I was with this one. And again, it just comes down to the pacing and kind of the repetitive nature of the whole thing. So I just wasn't vibing with this one like I have with so many of the other ones, and like I was with McCormick's other film, Replicator, which I enjoyed a lot more. So while this movie wasn't for me, I appreciate the release as a whole because Visual Vengeance really did a great job with the behind the scenes special features work on this, and that alone might make it worthy for you to pick up. But for my money, I am going to give The Abomination from Visual Vengeance 2.5 out of 5 stars. All right, so the last 2 weeks, we've seen 2 different Brett McCormick films reviewed here on the channel. Hopefully you guys enjoyed both of these reviews. And thank you to Visual Vengeance for sending these over my way to talk about with you guys. I really do appreciate that partnership. But I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. Are you familiar with The Abomination? And if so, has it been one you've always wanted to see? Are you picking up this release? Let me know what you think about this and anything else down in the comments below. I appreciate any and all support down there, so thank you so much for that. But as always, if you guys enjoyed this one, please hit that like button down below. That engagement really does help me out. And like I always say, I don't just talk movies, I talk all things media. Books, movies, video games, graphic novels, manga. If it's media related, I'm interested in it. And if you are too, you might consider subscribing. Make sure you check back in a few weeks or maybe next month. I guess we'll see when those videos go up. But hopefully I will be talking about spine number 11 and 12 from Visual Vengeance in the coming weeks here. Cannot wait to talk about those two. They look like a blast. But that is going to do it for today, guys. So if you enjoyed this one, thank you. I don't know, I'm reverting back to what I already said. See, this is what happens when I try to mix things up in the outro here. But anyway, guys, that is it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you all next time.